if you would like to get a Bible, if you have one, if you want to look with me, this is, here you go. Here's your one. Open it, that's real simple to find this one, Genesis chapter 1.
Okay, I can get that, I
Yeah,
can remember
that was
that.
not hard to find, really, right there in the very
Okay.
end. Genesis chapter 1. Okay. I want to read several verses here, and let's read, starting with verse 1. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." If you pay attention to that word waters, notice it has an S on it. I'm going to make some, I want to make a couple of points about that in a few minutes. Waters, it's plural, okay? I mean, that's an accurate rendering also, because it has to do with heaven. You wouldn't know that the waters have to do with heaven, but they do. They have to do with heaven. And that's why they use the plural for waters with an S. In verse 3 it says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness." I want to pause right here, and I want to make a point about that. And look, if you'll drop down to verse 16, and I want you to notice in succession of this, "And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. And God made the stars also." In verse 16 is the sun and the moon. And we do know that the light of the earth is the sun. But yet in verse 3, when God says, "Let there be light," the sun in this creative order has not been made yet. So I want you to kind of pay attention to that. It hasn't fallen in succession. Okay? How about, is that hard? Is that difficult? And the reason that I want to say this is because there is it's sort of like a blueprint, an architectural drawing, and in this blueprint it actually does start with where a blueprint would start, and that is it starts with the foundation. And the first thing you do with the foundation is you dig a good footer. The bigger the building, the deeper you dig. Got it? I mean, so what's the first thing that you have to do to build a building? What's first things in order? You have to deal with the minerals, i.e. the earth. The earth is a mineral base, rock, etc. And rock is the foundation of everything. So the stronger the building, you want to build on a stronger rock. You understand that? And we miss all this, but yet this thing is so beautiful in succession is as we learn it. And what it does, it shows the first thing that's a first building block in everything as far as an atom, A-T-O-M, is concerned. An atom in ancient Egyptian was called a tomb, A-T-U-M, that later on in this passage is called Adam, A-D-A-M. They're all the same thing. So whether you're talking about a tomb, A-T-U-M, from Egyptian mythology, or you're talking about an atom, A-T-O-M, that's the first building block in creation, whether it be a rock, a human, or you're talking about Adam, A-D-A-M. All the same thing. And this is a successional blueprint, diagram, schematic of the temple, the house God builds to live in. And if we can't get that in order, see, if we would do away with the idea that Christianity sold us that this is a history book, and this is the history of God creating the whole universe and the earth 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. That is really so far off, and it's hard for us to remove that from our thinking. But traditional Christianity, it has this choker collar on us. And we don't recognize it most of the time until somebody pulls on it a little bit and we get choked. And I know that happens a lot. Because all you got to do is I can just tug on it just a little, I can feel you get choked. Oh God, they don't know what he's doing, it's crazy or hell. You know, or something like that. You know, people get all defensive if I said what I just said, if I said this is not a history book, and it's not, it hasn't got anything to do with history. It hasn't got anything to do with historical characters. It has everything to do with the temple or the tabernacle or the house that God builds. Why would God build a house and not live in the house? Paul makes it very clear. You are the house that God builds, and you are the dwelling that God lives in. So if I said God lives in me, God is as me, then that makes me a little God. And people get all bent out of shape, and they get upset. Oh my God, no. You know, you hear what I'm saying? And we ourselves are hard to recognize ourselves that way. This is such a beautiful analogy when we can get a lot of that choker collar off, and we start to see it clearly as it really is. And I want to try to unveil some of it as we go through this morning. So verse 3, it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day. Okay? And I want to stop right there for just a minute. God called the light day. It's the Hebrew word yom. Yom. God called the light yom in Hebrew. And what yom means, it would have been clearer probably if they had said God called the light facets of life. L-I-F-E. So God said, in the light are facets of life, L-I-F-E. So that within this light contains all of the life, L-I-F-E, that's on this planet, period. Whether it be the life of a rock, does not the Scripture say that if we don't praise Him, the rocks will cry out?
Yes.
Well, how do the rocks cry out? They have life, L-I-F-E, in them. And you go from mineral, that's dirt, and everything that's within the dirt, whether it be precious stones or rocks or whatever, you go from mineral. From the mineral, you get vegetable. From the vegetable, you get animal, fish, bird. And from the animal, fish, bird, you come to the highest order of creation that God created for this particular dimension, and that's called mankind. And that's exactly what this is doing right here. It lays this in beautiful order if we can see it. If we can back up, take the choker collar off, take our beliefs and our blinders away, and begin to open our mind and look. And I know it's difficult for most Christians because certain things can be said, like it's not a historical book, that's very offensive to the Christian mind. It was offensive to me. When I heard it in myself for the first time, God began to speak to me years and years ago that it wasn't a history book. And I would argue, here's a history book, get behind me, the devil. The more I begin to research and study, the more I begin to realize it's not a history book. It is a mystery book about the greatest mystery that there is, and that's God's temple, God's house, which you are. So it says, and God called the light day. All of us need, no matter who we are, no matter where we live, no matter where we were, what culture we were raised in, period. Every breathing human being on the face of the earth needs to take a long look in a mirror at themselves. Not at everybody else, not at the person beside you, not at your spouse, but you need to take a long look in the mirror and come to recognize who you really are, who I really am. Not judging anything or anybody, and not judging the vision or the image of what you see in the mirror. Because what you see in the mirror is not really who you are. What you see is the vehicle that you ride in. What you see is the house you live in. You need to look deep in the darkness of your eyes into the soul of your being and see who you really are. And you know what you'll come up with? You know what you will finally come to the analysis of? I am as God is. Why could that? How could it be that way? Because the very thing that lives you is in you, as you, is God. How could that be? Well, let me say this. That I'm doing right now, I'm talking, How am I doing that? How am I talking? The first thing that I have to talk is breath. That's the only reason I'm talking. So all I'm doing is I'm just taking air, R-E, breath, and I'm just moving it through my throat, through my lips, through my mouth, my lingual, and my tongue, and I am making words with that. But what's making those words? It's the breath. It's the air. Well, I want to ask you, when it says right here, and the Spirit of God brooded, it says moved. Actually, the word is brooded. It's like a hen sitting on her eggs to create. That's what that word moved means. She brooded, the hen. The Spirit, that's the Hebrew word ruach. And you can look at that word, and you know what that word means? It means wind. It means air. It means breath. So that's what's brooding over me. What's the first thing that happens when a baby is delivered from its paradise, the womb? It has to breathe. It has to inhale and exhale. What's the last thing that you do before they say, well, he or she is dead? The air leaves them. So really, if the Spirit is breath, if the Spirit is air, and the words that I am assimilating are releasing out of my being, they aren't my words. They are God's words. Because without Spirit, I couldn't do this. So it doesn't matter what language or what tongue or what you're speaking on the face of the earth. Psalms tells us very clear, no matter what language it is, it's God speaking. It's God breathing through me. So if I would pay attention to what I say with my mouth, I would realize truly, Proverbs says, the power of life and death is in my tongue. Why is that be? Is that because I'm a powerful physical human carcass, a vehicle? No. It's because it's the I am that I am is breathing, speaking through me as itself. So if I get all in a tizzy, I get so bogged down by negative thinking, I get so off track that I'm not seeing clearly, but yet I'm speaking by this false image of what I'm saying. I am as God is creating my own havoc. And don't know it and can't see it. Why? I got blinders on. So, what I'm saying and I'm suggesting is we look deep, deep into the mirror and we ask, who am I? And when I really see who am I reverse that and I say, I am. And that's exactly what God said to Moses, tell them, I am. And that's what we have got to come to realize, that I am as God is. Whatever God is, I am. I am, Genesis 1:26 tells us right here very clearly, I am made as God's likeness. Not physically. Physically, no, because the tree is as God is. The bird, the animal is as God is. I have just been carried to a higher evolution of the rung of the ladder. I have mineral. Mineral is a part of what I'm made up of. I have vegetable. I'm a part of what vegetables. I have animal. I'm a part of what animal is. I have been made as the likeness, as the image of what God is. And I don't recognize that. I don't realize that. I forget that I am. So I have to take the time. And the thing that we fail to recognize many times is that we are on our own, O-W-N, individual journey. I'm not on the journey for somebody else. You know, we carry the weight and the responsibility of that. I want to be on the journey of this person. I want to be on the journey of that person. I'm responsible for this person. I'm responsible for that person. You know, and there is an element of responsibility in parenting up to a point. And at that point, they're on their own. Isn't that hard? Is that not hard? It was hard for me to cut that of their own, because even to this day, they're still my babies. You know what I'm saying? I still feel those are my babies. Dear God, they're all bigger than me or big as me, and they're still my babies. But that you have to come to that place of disattachment, not disassociation. No. Disattachment of trying to feel like I'm responsible for. No, that's not true. Everybody has to look in the mirror into the depth of their own soul. Look closely into the mirror in that dark circle in your eyes and just gaze down into that, and you will tap the very essence of who you are, which is soul, which is spirit, which is that God put in you. Doesn't matter what you did or what you didn't do, God did it. And all of that comes from this one word, verse 3, let there be light. And so I want to just put this up on the board, and I want to make some points about this light. Let's see if this blue one will show up pretty good. In Hebrew, the Hebrew word here for light is spelled with the aleph, the wav, and the Hebrew rash. So the rash has a 200 value, the vav has a 6 value, and the aleph has a 1 value. So when you add these up, you have 206, 7, right? You have 207, and when you add these together, 2 zeros 2, you have this number right here. Most magical number that there is, 9. 9 is the magic number. In Hebrew, the Hebrew clips start out with the aleph, and that's number 1, and it goes through a succession of them to number 9. And when you get to number 9, Hebrew actually starts all over when you get to the number 9, which is the tot. And then it starts over with 10. And then it goes to 90. Then it starts over with 100, and it goes to 900. Now that's a rough draft of how the Hebrew is laid out, and the way that I would break that down is I would break that down and say this is soul, this is body, and this is spirit. Why would I do that? Why would I start at 1 through 9 and call that soul? That is the diagram. That is the information. That is the blueprint that creates duality. You see, all of these numbers, 1 through 9, are single. All of these numbers, 10 through 90, are dual. They deal with the duality. You see, we're in a dual world. What is that dual world? See, everybody don't realize, most people don't even have a clue that they live as a duality. What is that duality? Y'all should know. Here you are knowing. What is that duality? I'm spirit body. I'm God matter. See what I'm saying? That's the duality. That's 10 through 90. So all of the glyphs in this row, 10 through 90, have to do with duality. And then you come up to 100 through 900. There's 3 characters in that. Well, when you get back to the 3, what are you back to? Spirit, the Trinity. Father, Mother, creation. So that's a succession of how the Hebrew glyphs are laid out, and it's basic, but yet in its very basic elementary stage, it has profound depth to it. Did you follow what I'm saying? So that first word that we come up with is or. That's the Hebrew word right here, or are, and it's the word for light, L-I-G, and it has a 9 value. So it has that mystical aspect of the tot, the number 9 in Hebrew. And there's so much about 9 that, if I were to break the number 9 down and we begin to look at it, it would be phenomenal as to how it breaks down. And I'm going to do that in a few minutes, and you'll see how 9 is like a timeless number. It deals in that dimension of timelessness. And I want to come back to that. But the character that we know of as Abraham, and if you want to just go with me to Genesis chapter 11, the character that we know of as Abraham was first Abram. You remember that? Abram, before they added the ham, the hay, to the end of his name, he was Abram. Okay? And he's introduced first right here in Genesis chapter 11. And I want you to see who he is and where he came from. Verse 31, Genesis 11:31, it says, and Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. And they went forth with them from Ur. You see that word Ur? That's this exact same word, light. Huh. Now wait a minute. Where does Abram come from? Abram, right there, it says he came from Ur. So where would we say the foundation of Abram is at? It's in the light. It's the same identical word. In Hebrew, Ur or are the same identical word. Now, and I say this because it's something that hardly no one knows in Christianity. The first place we find the word curse, C-U-R-S-E, mentioned is in Genesis chapter 3. And we have always heard of that very negatively. Now, either we lost the original meaning of the word curse, or religion and theology perverted the word curse, because the word curse is this word spelled twice, or, which actually means light upon light, or light against light. And the best way I can say that is to say it this way. This is how it was unveiled to me by the Spirit. That God deposited its light in you, and it's that light that built you in the womb of your mom. And then when your mom released you from the womb and you come out into this physical dimension, you needed an extra ingredient of that light to live, and that was the air you breathed, which was another source of light. So that word curse means light from within is in co-relationship with the light from without, so that the light from without is pulling on the light from within. That word got translated curse simply because it's like it's a struggle, and every one of us face it when we walk through it every day in this dimension, in this dimensional reality. Every one of us kind of struggle or in this tension, let me say that, tension. Every one of us are in this tension that we call reality, which is not a reality because it's constantly changing, of the light from without pulling on the light from within. You feel that. You don't even know that's what you're feeling, but you do feel it. Have you ever struggled with something? Well, of course, everybody does. So, notice what it says right here. And I realize that most of us don't know what these words are just because it hasn't been pointed out. So I'm pointing these things out. So they went forth with them from Ur of what?
Chaldees.
Ur of the Chaldees. And if you notice that word Chaldees, which is actually the word Kesdeia, and actually here's what the word means, astrology. People don't have a clue. They say, oh, the Bible is against astrology. Astrology is on every page of the Bible. Every page in the book. If it talks about God, it's talking about astrology, because God is a star. A star is light. 1 John 1:5 says God is light. Star is light. Ology is the study of. So astrology is actually the study of God. If you only get to know God, then you have to study astrology. And we've had that as taboo. Can't do that. But you know, that's what that word Chaldees means. So where did the light come? It says the light, he was from Ur of the Chaldees. The light come from the astrological wheel. It's through the astrological wheel that the sun emanates with the energy of its creative ability that brings life, L-I-F-E, to this dimension, and brings life, L-I-F-E, through you in your dimension. Okay, y'all getting that, I hope, all right? All right, Abram, now to show you, this is not a historical character. Everybody, oh God, it's got to be. No, it's not. Go with me to Galatians chapter 4. Galatians chapter 4. I'll show you this real quickly from the Apostle Paul. Galatians chapter 4. Genesis chapter 4, and look at verse 22. It says, "For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, one by a bondmaid, and the other by a free woman." Now let me say this to you. All through Scripture, you're going to see the story of 2 sons. Always. Whether they're twins or whether they're brothers, it really doesn't matter at all. Like it starts right out in Genesis chapter 4 with a struggle between 2 brothers. You go later on in that same succession of words, you'll come up with 2 sons. You'll come up with a Jacob and an Ishmael. 2 brothers. And there always seems to be this struggle between 2 brothers no matter where you go. It's just exactly like when you come to the story of Jesus. Jesus, his mythological brother was Thomas. What was Thomas? What was the nickname for Thomas? Doubting Thomas. Why? He represented the negative side of Jesus. So why he was called, what was he called? Didymus, Thomas, Didymus, and the word Didymus means the twin. Thomas, the twin of Jesus. So that all through Scripture you're going to see this, because you know what? You yourself are a dichotomy. You are a part of this dualistic nature, this dualistic world, and that's not wrong. It's you'll go all the way through your life trying to figure out which one of you is in control of you. And what you'll come to realize is you give the authority to every which one of you that you want to control you. Hallelujah, Brother Lynn. That was really good. Thank you. If you can get that, if you can possibly grab that and get that in you. So notice what it says. It says he had 2 sons because that's the story. That's how the story plays out. God himself is the eternal you, and your physical is the temporal you. And that's the dichotomy of the struggle between the 2 twins, between the 2 of yourself. It's written that Abraham had 2 sons. By the one was a bondman, the other one was a free. And he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, and he of the free woman was born by the promise or by the Spirit. Amen. Got it? Which things are, verse 24, make a great big star beside it. If you got a Bible you can write in. Look at it. Which things are what? An allegory, not a historical account. What is an allegory? An allegory is a mythological story about that contains profound truth in it. So even though they may use the name of something or someone or a person, place, or a thing, even though they may use a thing, the thing is only a pointer to what the truth is behind it. So when they take a character and use a name, they're talking about the truth that's behind the name, not the person or the individual. Not to try to say this is a historical character. If they're mythological or if they're allegorical, they're not historical. And it tells you in Matthew 14 that Jesus never used any other method than this, than parabole, which is allegorical or allegory. So watch what he says here. He says in verse 24, these things are an allegory. These are the 2 covenants. Hello? I'll talk about that. Because under the 2 covenants you have law and commandment. We ain't got a clue what law and commandment is. I can say law, or I can say commandment, and you know what? You're going to hear the same thing with your choker collar and with your blinders on that religious taught you to hear. You ain't ever going to hear the truth until you take your choker collar off and take your blinders off and you get out of the box. You have to get out of the box and open your mind and say, well, maybe it could be. And that gets scary and dangerous sometimes. So he says for one by a free woman, one by verse 24, these things are an allegory. These are the 2 covenants. One from the Mount Sinai, which genders to bondage. That's the one that we like to stay at. That's where religion's at. Where did we get religion? Where did we get it? Where did we get it? We got it from Mount Sinai. Where was Moses at? Where was Moses at when he got that? Mount Sinai. Ah, well, where is that? It says right there. It's bondage. Is that where you want to live? That's where we live. We live there. We make an conscious choice to live there. We make an conscious choice to stay the way that we are. Why? Because it seems like it takes struggle to get out of the way I am. Why? Because it's a contention. Why? Because it's light. Struggling with the light. To walk in the light. Does it require effort? Does it require discipline? Does it require something of me? Yes, it requires all of you. If God just wants part of you, He wants the whole thing. Hallelujah. You getting that? So, one from Mount Sinai, which genders to bondage, which is Agar. This Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and answers to the Jerusalem, which now is. In other words, it's talking about physical there, natural, and is in bondage with all of its children. Verse 26, but Jerusalem which is from above. Now wait a minute. How many of you realize there's two Jerusalems? Well, in Christianity, again, you choker collar and you blinders, they try to tell you that God's up there building you a great big city, but then God, when He gets ready, He's going to transport that great big city through the air, 1,500 miles square. He's going to transport it through the air and bring it down and set it down here on the earth like some kind of a missile or a spaceship. I used to teach that 35, 38 years ago. I did. I had just my teacher date. I had it all mapped out, worked out, and could tell you that. It's not believable unless you watch Star Wars. And you say, oh yeah, well God can do that. He can move that city. I mean, at what speeds He moving, as you reckon? He got everything tied down, flags and everything. Ain't going nowhere, but they go thousands, millions of miles an hour, transporting that thing. That's choker collar stuff. That's blinders. At least I won't cuss. Because it's dumb. It's dumb. We believe all this choker collar stuff, and we get choked on it. And we don't realize it. We get blinded by these things, not paying attention. Because truth is not complicated. Yes, Austin?
Will you tell me more about the brothers and the conflict with the brothers?
Oh.
What is that talking about, like in the Bible?
Okay, your brother is the image of yourself. For instance, the real you is not the physical you. The real you is the eternal, spiritual, divine you. That's one brother. That's the real. That's the one we know. Now, the false image you is the one that you see. The one that you're setting. So, and the Bible is about the struggle between the two. And everybody, if you stop thinking it, everybody knows that that's true. We struggle. And you know, usually we give in to the physical one.
When you say it's false, why is it false?
Which one? The real one?
No, you said the real one's the spiritual one.
The real one is
one.
the true one. The physical one is the false one.
Why do you say it's false?
It's temporary.
Okay.
It's changing, constantly changing. And so, that's the only word I can think of right now to use. It's not real, it's false.
Illusionary?
Yeah, illusionary. Yeah, it's an illusion.
Imitative?
I'm sorry?
Imitative? Imitation?
Imitation. That's another good word. But which one do we live? We live by the imitation. We live by this. Why, he has...
I mean, while we're on earth, we can't live. We can't live.
Oh, yeah.
Even if we're doing...
Yeah, see
unless we live in the false.
That's the complete misnomer. That's the lie that we're under. We are under that lie. We all are under that lie. And so we give into that lie thinking that I can't when I can. I have the power of all power within me that's undeveloped. It's not cultivated. In other words, there are a lot of terms I could use here. Mini God, a baby God, an infant Christ. The term Christ is so grossly misused, thinking that it's the name of Jesus when it's not. The word Christ is a mythological term that's referring to the infant God in you. And so everybody's walk, work, or journey is to cultivate and develop that divine power that's in them to give them a better, more wonderful, more blissful life. But if I live here without that development, cultivation, or growing up the baby God in me, so that that baby God actually becomes me, so that the life from within has broke forth to be the stronger, greater me. Is this making sense? A little bit?
I think our language is flawed.
Our language is difficult.
Because when you say the word false, I know what you mean, but at the same
It
time,
just has the connotation that
Yes.
false gives. You can't live in the earth if you don't have a physical body.
Yes,
there's
yes.
not a
God can't live in the earth without a physical body, but God's limited to the physical body because the physical body actually has control over God while He's in it, unless the physical body yields its control over to God and cultivates God to the point. And this is called evolution, because we are as a human species constantly evolving into a higher dimension of thought pattern. Like for instance, y'all are part of the younger generation, the millennials. You completely think different. That's not a bad
See,
thing.
and that's what sometimes when we listen to you talk, not to say it doesn't apply to everyone, but we weren't raised with religion.
Exactly.
So we don't have some of the inundations and
Yes.
assumptions.
I don't know what inundation is.
And you guys know, as well as all of your cousins and other siblings, you know that through school, you kind of received the brunt of not thinking traditional religion, because you were brought up in this place. You were brought up different.
A word for no in Hebrew, is there?
A word for what?
No,
N-O?
like yeah.
Like yes and no?
Yeah.
No, there's a word for no, K-N-O-W.
See, and I think that's a flaw with my language too, because we're built this construct of understanding of that duality.
No, don't?
There's a word for without, isn't there?
Yes, there is a word for without. Yes.
It's just-
So that has some sort of location, not existential.
All right, let me come back. All right, and y'all jump in, that's fine. I hope, is everybody good with this? Everybody good? The main thing is we're thinking, because if we're thinking, then we are in a really good position. If we're thinking we're taking the blinders off, we're taking the choker collar off, because if I won't even think, if I just all of a sudden lock down within my choker collar, my box, I lock down, bless God, He don't know what He's talking about. Then I'm not thinking. I'm shutting down. I'm trying to protect my box. But if we're thinking, we're getting out of the box. We're rising above it. So let me.
To add to what we were talking about, to become one, body, soul, and spirit is the goal of the whole game.
Absolutely. To become one is to merge my physicality with my
Divinity.
spirituality, with my divinity. It's to merge them, to marry them. That's what it's all about. When it talks about let the two become one in Genesis chapter 2, where it's referring to, it's not referring to two different people, a man over here and a woman beside him, and they are saying vows and saying, now, me and her are going to be one, or her and him are going to be one. That's bull. They ain't never going to be one. They are themselves. They are who they are. But the two that's married is you and your divine self.
Hallelujah.
Y'all are one. Y'all are married. And nobody can pull asunder that, period. It cannot be divided. That's the divine union. That is the one. We just never develop that. We never cultivate that. The only reason that Jesus says in Matthew 17, I think it is, that there will be no marriage in heaven is simply because that union is already there.
Hallelujah.
You can't join it together because it already is. This is the only place that can happen in this dimension. In this dimensional world. And in this dimensional world, we come under certain laws. And we don't realize our physical body is under laws. Not the 10 Commandments that render to bondage that was on Mount Sinai. But you know what? I say law, I say commandment. What do you think? You think with your choker collar, you think with your box. 10 Commandments. Every one of you know good and well that every one of you, especially my age, y'all saw that movie back in 1960. But gosh,
Charlton Heston.
yeah, we know. I know exactly who God is. Charlton Heston's God. Or Charlton Heston's Moses. I'm sorry. I know who Moses. I mean Moses. I go look at Charlton Heston. There you are. Hey there, God. I mean Moses. But we all have been so choked down by these ideologies out of a mythological book. The most phenomenal mythological book that we have ever been given is the Bible, and we don't even know how to read it. We don't know how to look at the stories in it. We don't know how to extract the power and the truth that's in these stories that gives me the freedom to be who I really am. Hallelujah. All right, let me back up here just a little bit. Verse 25 says, For this Hagar is from Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answered to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But to Jerusalem, which is from above, is free, which is the mother of us all. Did you get that? Who is your real mother? Honestly, your real mother is not the one that gave you birth, that brought you in here. Your real mother is the mother God that created you in the womb of your physical mother. That's your real mother. That's the one we don't hardly even know. But notice what he called it. He calls it Jerusalem. And that's two different words in Hebrew. It's the word Yeru or Jeru. You know, pronounce the J with a Y or I or Yod. Yeru. Yeru. And then the word Shalom. We're kind of familiar with the word Shalom. We're not familiar with the word Yeru. The first part of this particular word, since it's two words. The first part of this word Yeru, actually the word Yeru, listen to this. See if you can comprehend, or let this sit down in your thinking since we're thinking. The word Yeru actually means to flow. To flow. In other words, flow as water flows, or as rain comes down and flows. That's what the word means, Yeru. It actually means to flow as water, or as water comes down. And, listen to this, the word Yeru means to instruct and or to teach. That's what I'm trying my best to do. I'm trying to flow and instruct and teach. I'm trying to Yeru you. That's what that word means. And then the word Shalom actually means help, prosperity, and peace. And that's what I want more than anything for you. For me, I want you to be healthy. I want you to be prosperous. And I want you to be in peace. And guess what? We struggle against. We struggle against those very things. We struggle against our Jerusalem, which is from above. We struggle against our real mother, which wants to bring us peace and wants to teach us and instruct us in all the ways of who we really are.
Yeah.
Glory. So, let me go back to Genesis chapter 1 now. You know, I say that with passion simply because I am very passionate about it. Well, why is that? Because I'm passionate about humanity, because I love people. I love my brothers and my sisters. I love humanity. I love my enemies. I love those that say things bad about me. I love humanity. I want to love them with the love of God, and so in that love I'm passionate. In the ancient Hebrew, that's called off. A-F. It got translated as wrath. So when we see the wrath of God in the Old Testament, we don't realize it's really referring to the passion of God that's willing to die for that which it's created. That's where I'm at. I'm at that passionate place in my life that I'm willing to die, I'm willing to lay down. I would rather give myself that humanity can get this and live from it and let it become them, let it be them, because that's exactly how it's been designed to be. So that we can have shalom, so that we can have peace, we can have health, and we can have prosperity. Do you not know anybody that doesn't want those things? Don't everybody want those things? Peace, health, and prosperity. How do we look for it? We don't look for it where it's found. We look for it in the world. We look for it in the Jerusalem, which is from the mountain up there. The mountain of bondage. That's what we look for at. It ain't there. You can't find it there. It gives you a false image. There's that word again. It gives you a false image of what it is. It's not there. Okay, go with me back to Genesis 1. Going through this. It says in verse 5, and God called the light day. Hebrew word yom. And again, that word means facets of life. It means abundance of life. It means life with health and longevity. That's what the Hebrew word yom means. But when the translators called it the word day, what did you think of? You thought of a 24-hour period, but actually in the 24-hour period, you only saw 12 hours in that 24-hour period, so they called it a day. And guess what? You weren't even seeing what the real word was, what it meant. I see that. The choker collar in the box says, huh? How do you get that? Well, the word yom is how I get it. The real Hebrew word yom. It means facets of life. There are many, many facets of life. There are greater facets of life and lesser facets of life, right? Right, yeah. So, it says in verse 5, God called the light day. God called light that. That's what God called or. He called or life. And you look at it and you think about it that way. Let me say this to you. You'll understand this. Earth is the base, right? But here's what happened. The light from above, which is the light from above, let me do the cardinal cross, because we're going to have to look at this in just a minute. This is Aries, right? In astrological wheel. So if I'm looking at the astrological wheel, that's this Chaldean, that's what it means, astrology. If I'm looking at this wheel, Aries, the first thing that Aries, where Aries is at, Aries represents 6 o'clock in the morning. And right here, this is Libra. And Libra represents 6 o'clock in the evening, right? So, if I'm looking at the light, the day, called the day, this is called the day, and this is called the night, right? Everybody follow this analogy? All right, so where does the light come from? It comes from fire. Right? And so where is the fire? Where is it destined to? Where's it destined to go? Taurus, which is what? Which is the earth. Mineral. First steps right here we're looking at in Genesis is to go to the earth. And to get to the earth, fire, to get to the earth, it has to go through what? Gemini, which is air. And when it comes through the air, what's the next thing it has to go through?
Water.
Water, exactly, which is Cancer. Look, we're talking about the building blocks of everything that's in this physical dimension, which is fire, earth, air, and water. And there is a succession. There is an order of this, and here it lays right here in front of you. It starts with the fire. Its designation is the earth, but to get here it has to come through air and water. Guess what? That's the makeup of your being.
Yes.
You're an air-water vehicle. Hallelujah. Created from what? Created from the very foundation of the minerals that the fire merged itself with and created you. Any way you look at it, and notice what this says right here. God called the light day, and He called the darkness night. The evening and the morning were Ayil. Actually, the word night is the Hebrew word Ayil, and the word Ayil actually means to fold or to bend backwards. So the thing about the night is that immediately what does the sun do at 6 o'clock? It falls into the darkness. It bows backwards. It yields itself. It yields itself. That's what the Hebrew word right there for night is referring to. So you still see the procession, and then see what he says right here in verse 5. And the evening and the morning were the first. I'm sorry, verse 4 is where I'm at. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided. God divided. God divided. This is this line I drew right here. That's your dividing point, right? Divided what? He divided the light from the darkness. He divided the day from the night, and God divided. Now, if I want to show you something about this number right here. I talked about this to start out with. I want to show you something. This is a phenomenal number. If I make this complete circle, what is this circle called? 300 what?
60 degrees.
360 degrees. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. If I do this to this number, 3 and 6 and 0 is what?
9.
If I divide this 360 degree circle, I have 180 degrees up here. What do I have?
9.
If I separate this and I begin to quarter it off, and I do it, what do I have? There's not anywhere you can go here. I mean, or I can take this and make it into a eighth. What do I got? Most phenomenal number in the scale. And you can just go infinitum like that. You can just go on and on and on and on and on. So God divided it, and then let me do one other thing, and I'll just try to quit or unhook here, so that we can. God proclaimed, God called, proclaimed. That's what he did. God announced, God proclaimed. He called this that he called it good. That's what he said. He said it's good. It's all good. And if we can grasp that, we can understand the good. I want to read you some notes, if I can find them. Where did I put them? It's something that I wrote. Here we go. I wrote this just the other day, just in prayer and meditation. I kind of had lived on some of this a minute ago. In the Egyptian hieroglyphs, we have the word atum, A-T-U-M, which is referring to atom, A-T-O-M, the first building block in the material, natural, manifest world. In the Hebrew/Kabbalah, they drew from this ancient wisdom and came up with the word Adam, A-D-A-M, or mankind, or from the word mankind, referring to both male and female. Okay? So, male and female, according to Genesis 5, male and female are called Adam. Both. He and her. Both are called Adam. Okay? That's a whole plethora of other things to teach, or whatever. Okay, and they came from this right here, the mineral, earth. That was the foundational tool to build it. The minerals were the foundational tools to build it all. Build a house on the rock, right? Isn't that what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7? Build your house on the rock. If you build it on the sand, what will happen? What is sand? Sand is a choker collar, blinders. It's not, it's false. Using that word false, it's not stable. It's changing, constantly changing, back and forth. So, this word Adam, A-D-A-M, or man, in Sanskrit, means to think. So, whether you're a man or a woman sitting here, as a physical person, hopefully what you're doing right now is exactly what your name describes. You're thinking. And if you're thinking, that's really good. Because if you're thinking, you've got to be tapped into thoughts. And the scripture says, as a man or a woman thinketh, so it will become. So that the more you think about something, you know what you're doing? You pour life into it, you'll become it. You think negative, you get hung. How many of you ever done it? God, I do it all the time. I get hung up on a negative thought. That thing won't leave me. It just haunts me, and I'm having a problem, or I'm having a situation going on in my life, and that thing, they just don't want to leave. They're like an old song that you get hooked on. You can't quit singing. You ever had one of them happen that just keeps on going over and over and over? Go away! You know? And then you keep going. So what do you have to do? What do you have to do when that happens? The hardest thing in the world to do when that happens is to purposefully think different. Why? Because if you constantly think on it. Why? Because thoughts are filled with power. Why? Because they come from God. You mean the negative ones? Yeah, God just They're just a stream of them flowing. And it says in Ezekiel, it is like a river that flows, and there are all manner of fish, thoughts, in that river. Thoughts that will build you up, thoughts that will tear you down, thoughts that will serve you, thoughts that will imprison you, thoughts that will lift you up, and thoughts that will pull you down. Okay? So, the word Sanskrit means to think. This creation from the realm of spirit or ether, called in Hebrew ayin or nothingness, by the directions of intelligence begins the process of stepping or descending. This is talking about spirit, how it comes into you. Stepping or descending from its ether or ethereal place of energy or power into dimensional reality, which is you and me. So what steps are descended or fell, I can use the word fell, not literally, maybe a bad communicative word, I'm not sure. But I do know this is what God did. God stepped inside you. God descended. God fell. God moved inside you in creation, in your creation as you. And so what does He do? He steps into, and I come up with a word here, I don't know if it's a word or two words, and I put them together, dimensional manifestation. And in dimensional manifestation, this place of dimensional manifestation, I made some notes in a book that I was reading. And I want to read you these notes I wrote. It says, God stepped as a baby learns to take each step, so mankind learned to step deeper into his or her material manifestation. Hope you can hear this. So mankind stepped from its seventh dimensional reality, which is divine, from its seventh reality. It stepped as spirit, God, source, power, whatever names that you want to give, stepped from there into its lower physical, natural dimensional reality. It steps into, all the way into its heart. And this is where the heart is the key to where all of this takes place. Everything that you live and move and have your being is from your heart. From your heart, as a man thinketh, where? In his heart. That's where it's at. So it's in your hearts where the struggle is at. Have you already felt that?
Oh, yeah.
God, that's exactly where I wrestle. I mean, sometimes I'm in a bad place, and I'm serious. Sometimes some of my best prayer closet, some of my best breakthroughs are going down the road in my car.
Right.
And going down the road in my car, sometimes I am screaming at the top of my lungs at God.
Amen.
I am, pardon the expression, I am pissed to the max. Bless God, you know what I mean? Sometimes my best breakthrough is going down the road in my car, in my prayer closet. So that's for me, you know, sometimes that's exactly where I work it out, and that's where I get my victory.
Yes.
I ain't saying that's the only place, but I'm saying that sometimes that happens for me, and that happens to me, and it's dealing with my heart. It's dealing with this dimensional reality, and if I put a little stick man up here, right here, this is a picture of you, so that if you want to come to the point where you constantly keep that smile on your face, you have to work it out right there. That's as low as the Spirit of God steps into you. He steps down from his seventh dimensional, down into the sixth, the fifth, and the fourth dimensional reality. That's as far as he goes. And then from there he leaves the soul to descend into a three-dimensional world, which that's where you and me live. And it's in this three-dimensional world that the Apostle Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 7 and 8, and it's probably some of the most confusing passages of Scripture in the New Testament. Most people don't understand it, why they do not understand the ancient mythologies. Paul says, I was alive one time. But, let me close with that passage of Scripture. Go with me to Romans chapter 7 real quick. Romans chapter 7. And again, we will just pick back up here next Sunday. on this subject because I have so much that I want to share from here about this. Romans chapter 7, verse 9. Look at what it says. Verse 9 says, for I was, that's past it, I was alive without what?
The law.
I was alive without the law. Now immediately, if you have your choker collar on, you got your religious blinders on, you are automatically thinking that's from Sinai. And so what you have, when you start looking at that, you have this number 10 attached to it. It ain't got a thing to do with what that's talking about. I was alive without the law. Without what law is he talking about here? He's talking about the law of dimensionality. He's talking about the law, the natural law of this earth dimension. Why? There are natural laws that govern this earth dimension. I can give you one for sure. You all know it's the law of gravity. Well, if you can defy that law, or if you can overcome that law, guess what? You can float. Right? I'll give you another one. Listen to this one. This has to do with this dimensional reality, the law of attraction. If you've ever heard Esther Hicks and the teachings of Abraham, big on the law of attraction. The law of attraction, what does that mean? I attract the reality that's in my life. I do that. I magnetically draw it to myself. And I could go on and on and on about this law because this is the one Paul was talking about. He's not talking about the law of the Ten Commandments. He said, man, I was alive without this dimensional reality world. And look what happened. Look what he says. I was alive without the law once, and when the commandment, now he talks about a different thing. Is the law and a commandment the same thing? No, they're not the same thing. Because there are certain speeches, that's what the word commandment means. Actually, it means speech. It means to talk, or it means to tell. I was alive without this ability to speak, to talk, and to tell. And then all of a sudden I come under this amount and notice that when the commandment came, what happened? Sin, or actually time, revived, and guess what happened to me? What happened? What did he say? What does he say? I did what? Well, was Paul dead when he wrote this? How in the world can he say I died? He's very much alive when he wrote this. What is he talking about? He's talking about his higher self died to his lower self. When his lower self come in this realm of laws, when he come into this realm, and then through the commandment, through the speech, through the talk, through the very things that God has given me with power, I built myself a box. And now I live in it. And guess what? There's nobody can get me out of my box but me. I remember, God, I remember 40 years ago, 40-something years ago.
How old are you, Papa?
I don't remember. I am 72. I remember, it has been a long time, 40-something years ago. 40 plus years ago. My life was in a hell of a mess. I was on my way to prison. And I had 2 children. And I was not a good husband at all. I was a very, very lousy husband. A very corrupt husband. And I was in a lot of trouble. And my oldest brother was a GBI narcotics agent. And he come to me. Me and him never really got along very good. He was 4 years older than me, and he always put me up to mischief and meanness because I was his first younger brother in the middle of the family. And so after we got into a fight when I was 17, we got into a fight, he was 22. And he's 6'5", he's a big guy, right? All my grandkids know my big brother. And the only way I could fight with him at 6 foot, he's 6'5", the only way I could fight with him, I had to have leverage, buddy, and I knew how to use leverage. I got me a steel bar, and he was married and had left. And he come back out to the house, and I was there. I was 17. And he said some things, and me and him got into a fight. We were in the back corner of the house, and there was a steel bar in the corner, and I got that bar. And I mean, I was so mad, I was spitting fire. And I was gonna kill him, period. I was gonna put him out of his misery, and Daddy pulled in. And had not Daddy pulled in, I would have beat my brother to death with that steel bar. I had it, already made it in my mind to go kill him. And so, he became a state patrolman and then later moved over into the division of GBI narcotics. And so he was an undercover GBI narcotics agent for like 25 years. And was very good at what he done. He come to me when I was 25, 26. He said, Lynn, they are under investigation with you, and I can't tell you all the pros and cons. I can just tell you they know what you're into. And I'm not sure what you can do, but if you don't do some things, I said, you're going to prison. And I knew that. But I hadn't seen him that much. And so I was in, my marriage was all on the rocks. And I went to my mother and I said, Mama, I don't know what to do. She said, well, Lynn, I'm going to give you some money, and I want you to take this money and you and Connie go to Gatlinburg, to the mountains. We went to the mountains of Gatlinburg, and I can't remember what year it was. It was 74 or 75, I think, 1974 or 5. And up there, I fell on my knees in a motel room. And I said, God, I need help. And at that time, my life changed. Now, I mean, it changed, drastically changed. I didn't have a Bible. I never ever read the Bible. But I got me a Bible, and I couldn't quit reading it. I mean, I was like addicted to it. And I have never lost that addiction. All of these long years, you know, most all of my adult life I've spent in the love of this book, because I found answers that had never been given to me from this book. So, you know, I encourage all of you, find out who you really are, because who you really are is you are a person of great power. The Spirit breathes through your words to create your world. So pay attention to what you say. When you get angry, pay attention to what you say. Because many times we curse ourselves. We bring the creative ability through the words that we use. So I encourage you, pay attention to yourself. Get to know yourself. I mean, that's the main one. Okay? All right, well, I'm going to quit right there and get on.
Well, that's good preaching there, Brother Lynn.